Maine has declared Donald John Trump ineligible for holding office again, making it the second state to bar him from its primary election ballot. This decision stems from the state's top election official's ruling, Secretary of State Shenna Bellows, who stated that Trump's post-2020 election actions rendered him unfit for office. In contrast, California has asserted that Trump's name will stay on its primary ballot, citing limited power for election officials to remove candidates. Secretary Bellows justified her decision by highlighting Trump's role in the Capitol attack on January 6, contending that he did not qualify for the ballot. The citizens challenging his eligibility argued that he had incited an insurrection, making him ineligible under the 14th Amendment. Bellows acknowledged the unprecedented nature of her decision, considering the 14th Amendment's Section 3. The rulings in Maine and Colorado, the latter from a recent Colorado Supreme Court decision, emphasized national tensions regarding democracy, ballot access, and the rule of law. These events have intensified calls for the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene in the dispute over Trump's eligibility. The Trump campaign has criticized the Maine and Colorado rulings as partisan election interference efforts, characterizing them as a threat to American democracy. As the 2024 election approaches, lawyers on both sides are urging the U.S. Supreme Court to provide guidance on a constitutional amendment enacted after the Civil War. This amendment's obscure clause lies at the heart of the effort to prevent Trump from running for the presidency again. In contrast, courts in Minnesota and Michigan have ruled that election officials cannot prevent the inclusion of Trump on the Republican Party's primary ballots. Michigan's Supreme Court, for instance, concluded that political parties should determine candidates' eligibility for the presidency. The legal landscape is complex, with ongoing battles in more than 30 states. The decisions in Maine and California underscore the need for Supreme Court guidance on the constitutional amendment's interpretation, potentially shaping the trajectory of these challenges and the broader political landscape. In Oregon, where the same group involved in the Michigan lawsuit is pursuing legal action, another court decision regarding the removal of Mr. Trump from the ballot is anticipated. However, Oregon's Secretary of State had previously refused to exclude him in response to an earlier challenge. California's Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, a Democrat, faced a Thursday deadline to certify the official candidate list, allowing local election officials to prepare ballots for the upcoming election. Despite a late request from the lieutenant governor to explore ways to remove Trump, Weber indicated her inclination to keep him on the ballot based on her interpretation of California law. The legal cases are grounded in a constitutional amendment from the Reconstruction era designed to prevent Confederate officials from serving in the U.S. government. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualifies individuals who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding office. The lack of clarity on how this criterion should be applied has left election officials and judges across the country in uncharted territory as they await guidance from the Supreme Court. This case is poised to be the most politically significant matter before the Supreme Court since the resolution of the disputed 2000 election in favor of President George W. Bush. The court, now more conservative, particularly due to the appointment of 3 justices by Mr. Trump, is expected to play a crucial role in shaping the outcome. Mr. Trump and his legal team have characterized the efforts to bar him from ballots as a deceptive tactic by Democrats fearing him as a candidate. Conversely, groups leading the disqualification efforts argue that Trump's attempts to undermine the 2020 election warrant extraordinary measures to safeguard American democracy. Shenna Bellows, the official in Maine responsible for evaluating the petition in that state, is not only the state's first female Secretary of State but also a former state senator. She has served as the former executive director of the nonprofit Holocaust and Human Rights Center of Maine and of the American Civil Liberties Union of Maine. In her comprehensive 34-page decision, Secretary of State Shenna Bellows asserted that Mr. Trump's petition to be included on the Maine ballot was invalid. She argued that he falsely claimed on his candidate consent form to be qualified for the presidency. According to Ms. Bellows, the record indicated that Trump, through several months leading up to January 6, 2021, promoted a false narrative of election fraud, inciting his supporters to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. She concluded that Trump was aware of the potential for violence and, at least initially, supported its use, as he both encouraged it with inflammatory rhetoric and failed to take timely action to stop it. Legal experts anticipate that the scope of a Supreme Court decision on this matter will determine whether these challenges will be promptly resolved or extended over months. A ruling stating that Trump's conduct doesn't violate the 14th Amendment would likely halt challenges in multiple states. A more specific ruling on the Colorado case might permit Trump to stay on the state's primary ballot while providing an opportunity for lawyers contesting his eligibility to argue against his inclusion in the general election. Ethan Strimling, a former mayor of Portland and Democratic state legislator, was among the petitioners in Maine. They praised Secretary Bellows for her courageous and correct decision, emphasizing the principle that no elected official is above the law or the Constitution. Trump has the option to appeal Ms. Bellows's decision to Maine's Superior Court within 5 days. The order's enforcement is contingent on the court's ruling on the appeal, which the Trump campaign intends to file soon. Both Maine and Colorado are scheduled to hold Republican primaries on March 5, known as Super Tuesday. Challenges to Trump's ballot access have been initiated in over 30 states recently, primarily through legal channels. Due to a quirk in Maine's constitution, registered voters must first file a petition with the Secretary of State. Ms. Bellows considered arguments on 3 such petitions on December 15. Trump's legal team, responding to the Colorado decision, argued that it should not be applicable in Maine due to differences in state laws and standards. They also contended that Trump had not been afforded a fair opportunity to litigate the facts in Colorado, and the Secretary of State lacked the authority to exclude him from the ballot, citing the Constitution's reservation of such power to the Electoral College and Congress. Richard L. Hassan, a law professor and election law expert at the University of California, Los Angeles, highlighted that the Maine decision showcased the influence of the Colorado court ruling in facilitating similar decisions. He noted the courage required to disqualify a major candidate and emphasized that once Colorado took such action and brought the issue to public attention, it became easier for other states to follow suit. Given the intricate legal questions involved, Hassan asserted that the U.S. Supreme Court is best suited to resolve these issues. If the Supreme Court chooses not to disqualify Mr. Trump, although its decision would not be binding for Congress, it would create significant political challenges for Congress to deviate from the court's stance. In California, where Democrats have significant control, it might have seemed a likely place for a ballot challenge akin to the successful one in Colorado. However, legal experts noted that unlike many other states, California does not explicitly grant its Secretary of State the authority to disqualify presidential candidates. Despite the absence of explicit authority, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, a Democrat, urged Secretary of State Shirley Weber to explore all legal options to remove Trump from the ballot using the same constitutional justification employed by the Colorado Supreme Court. In response, Weber indicated her intention to defer the question to state and federal courts, which had already dismissed at least 2 lawsuits challenging Trump's qualifications in California. Weber emphasized her obligation to address ballot eligibility questions within legal boundaries and in a manner that transcends political divisions. Governor Gavin Newsom of California expressed his belief that officials in the state should not remove Trump from the ballot, stating that while Trump poses a threat to liberties and democracy, California addresses such concerns by defeating disliked candidates at the polls, considering everything else a political distraction. Law.